everybody. It is Mike. I am back to talk about the second movie in the Children of the Corn franchise. This one is called Children of the Corn 2: The Final Sacrifice. But as we know, since there are like 12 more movies, no, there's not that many, that it is not the final sacrifice. There is more death in the corn to come. Um, this movie was released in 1992. That was 10, almost, well, 8 years after the original. Um, and it is set directly following the the original. It starts out with some people going down into a basement of a business and finding all these dead bodies. Um, of course, Malachi and Isaac are gone, so the kids are just kind of, nothing at that point. Still very weird. But we start out with the kids being put on a bus in Gatlin and being bused to the neighboring town of Hemingford, Nebraska. So that's how the movie starts out. This movie was directed by David Price, who has not done a lot of directing. He's done a lot of stuff, other acting and producing and writing, but he has not done a whole lot of directing. It stars Terrence Knox, who has done some TV and some movies. He got his start, I believe, on TV, on a cop show. Then we have his character is Garrett, and he is kind of a second-rate reporter. He works for a rag, as they call it, sort of like the National Enquirer. And he seems to show up just a little bit too late for the big story of all the murders that had taken place and the kids being bussed off, but he decides he's going to hang out and try to figure out another angle at of this story. He is accompanied by his very obnoxious, crabby, snarly son, Danny, played by Paul Shearer. Him and his father have no relationship because his father basically abandoned him and his mother before he was born. So yeah, there's a whole lot of bickering and fussing and carrying on and whatever. We also have the main child of the corn, Micah. He is played by Ryan Bowman. He's an effective little creepy guy. Dark hair, kind of dark eyes. He has a genuinely kind of creepy look to him, even before he is the child of the corn. I mean, he's one of the children of the corn. I can't get this glare off my glasses. Let's see. Okay, that helps a little. All right. And then we have the beautiful Lacey. She is played by Christy Clark. Truly, the only two people in this cast that I knew were Terrence Knox and Christy Clark, because Christy Clark was on Days of Our Lives for like a million years. She played Lacey, and yeah, I loved her hair. Her hair was amazing. And then the other main character in this movie is Rosalind Allen, and she plays Angela. She is the one that brings Micah into her home. Micah being one of the kids that are bussed over to Hemingford. And then we have all these other side characters. Some of them are kind of funny. There's this old lady named Ruby and her sister. Ruby is against these kids coming to Hemingford, so much so that she has her house jacked up and ready to be moved to a whole nother town, this big, humongous White House. Okay, I guess that's one way to react. And then her sister, who is in a wheelchair, she's also kind of humorous. We had this weird doctor who apparently has some kind of idea of what the kids are all about, as well as the sheriff, who seems to be in that same realm of knowing what everything is all about, but they soon find out they should have never trusted these kids. And then we have an American Indian, who knows a lot of the background history of everything that happened. I loved him. He was a great character. He was probably, between him and Lacey, they were probably the nicest characters in the group. Pretty much everybody else was kind of jerky or pissy. But yeah, so we have these kids transported over to Hemmingford, which was right next to Gatlin. We do start out at the beginning, at the very beginning, with Micah just kind of glaring at people and being weird. So they all go to Hemmingford. They're in different houses. They're all very weird. But I guess if you had been worried about He Who Walks Behind the Rose growing up and listening to Wackadoo, the other, Isaac and Malachi, you would be a little wackadoo too. But they miss each other, so Micah goes through the corn to meet up with him, and he is possessed by He Who Walks Behind the Rose. It's a whole thing. So he goes from being a relatively docile, weird kid who's living with Angela, and Angela runs a bed and breakfast, so you have Garrett and his son there trying to figure out a story angle. Micah comes back from that trip completely different, because at first he was kind of nice-ish towards the other people there at the house, but then he just becomes kind of creepy and mean. So then we move into the kids being children of the corn again, and just running around killing people for grins, whatever. Anybody who goes against them, of course, and of course, being the children of the corn, they're after the adults. So we have a little Wizard of Oz. The house is falling. The house is falling. There's really actually some of the dialogue. What a world! What a world! Just silliness. With poor Ruby and her house on hydraulic lifts. You can imagine what happens if you haven't seen this. And then her poor sister doesn't get much better treatment, needless to say. Her electronic wheelchair gets taken over by Micah, and she does this crazy little ride up and down, and she's screaming. And the funny thing is, she's going to the bingo hall, but nobody in the bingo hall with these huge windows seem to notice that she's flying around back and forth and has no control over her wheelchair. And she finally gets taken out by a semi. And after she goes through the windows of the bingo hall and almost, hits this guy as he was getting up, he says bingo. So then, basically, the rest of the adults get taken out and I won't go into details, but some of it is satisfying, especially the sheriff. I hated him. But kids take care of them again, and then they go after, of course, the ones that are left, which is Garrett and Angela. But they also don't they're trying to convert Garrett's son, Danny, to be one of the children of the corn. They go through this whole little process, this whole little, show, and they think Danny's going to be a part, and Micah, of course, living with Angela, kind of keeps an eye out. He decides he doesn't think that Danny's going to work, so he goes after Angela and Christy. There's a whole scene with everybody in the cornfield. Boom, bang, explosions, craziness, and then you have the end. Micah becomes depossessed, unfortunately, too late. So, this movie, like I said, they didn't have any really of the original kids, I don't think, but after 8 years, those kids were probably on Medicare by that point. So what are my overall thoughts on this movie? As far as the location and atmosphere, the creep value, I thought it was pretty good. I hate cornfields. I grew up in the middle of them. I always hated them. They always creep me out because you never know what's in them. Um, and the town, was pretty cool, creepy. So as far as the location, I'm going to give it an A. As far as the characters, truthfully, most of the characters were annoying. They were either shady, bitchy, whiny, or they were children of the corn. So really, the three characters, Terrence Knox's character was okay. He had his redeeming qualities, but I liked Angela because she was pretty upbeat um, and a decent character through the whole thing. Lacey, I liked her; she was pretty good, and the Indian, I liked him. Of course, I can't think of his name right off, and I looked it up and I wrote it down, and I can't read it, so deal with it. Yeah, so characters, I'm going to give them a C, just because the majority of them you just wanted them to die. As far as pacing, there were a lot of sluggish moments in this movie where there was not a whole lot going on. I understand some of it was character development, but some of the scenes were completely useless. As far as the movie goes, I understand that they were trying to build a little relationship between Lacey and Danny, so we had to go through the whole swimming and going out to um, her favorite spot and finding out he's afraid of heights. That never really did come into play, so I'm not sure what that was all about. But yeah, there were some issues. So I gave that a C. As far as my buy-in to this, did this movie hook me? It did. It was an interesting little movie. Um, this was the only other Children of the Corn to be released at theaters. All the other ones were never either were TV movies or direct to video movies. They were not released in theaters, which kind of surprises me because there's some bigger stars in some of the later movies. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. I love the kills. I love the silliness. Some of the dialogue was, like I said, from Wizard of Oz, and um, the sheriff was kind of over the top with some of his stuff. And yeah, it was kind of interesting. And of course, um, the lead guy, he was pretty funny, Terrence Knox character. So I gave that a B. And as far as the kills, most were pretty creative. You have a house falling on somebody, you have somebody sucked into a farm machine and getting chopped up and spit out. You have the crazy wheelchair death. Um, uh, yeah, some interesting. You got a bunch of people getting burnt up. Um, yeah, it's pretty good. The poor guy. The You have this one where this guy is stabbed to death, and then they start sticking suckers in his mouth and suckers all over his. It's very goofy, but yeah. So that is my review. As far as an overall grade, I'll give this one a B minus. And since it's a part of a collection, and I'm probably going to keep the collection, it will stay on the shelf. So, all right, guys, that's it for this review. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care and have a good one.